I met my husband about 2 years ago. He's Nigerian, and he came over to the US for school. He came to the US January 2020, right before the pandemic hit. Because of the pandemic, he lost his scholarship that was paying for 60% of his school fees, so his father could no longer afford to pay the fees. His ambitions also changed during this time as he wanted to pursue his own thing instead of going to school, so he basically dropped out. And the visa that he had was for school only, so he became an illegal immigrant. I love him very much, and I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him, so we got married at the court. And then we started his work visa and green card process. To say that the odds were stacked against us is an understatement. I was 23 at the time, I had no job, literally no income, and I was living with my mother. So my husband and I had very little evidence regarding finances to show the USCIS that it wasn't a sham marriage. We couldn't afford to get an apartment together. We couldn't afford to buy joint property together. The only thing we could actually get together was a joint bank account, and even that was tough because of our lack of income and his lack of US documents. He had no social security card or US ID. All he had was a Nigerian passport, so finding a bank that would take his international ID was really hard. But we provided what we could, but it wasn't much. We submitted our application in December of last year. The work permit usually takes about 6 months to come in the mail, so we had nothing else to do but wait. This past June had made it 6 months, and we heard nothing from USCIS. The only time they communicated with us was when they first received our case file. After December, it went cold. In early July, my husband started getting nervous. I told him everything would be okay. One day, I visualized him getting his work permit in the mail. Saw his smile and felt the letter in my hands, my heart thumping with excitement. When he came back from the library, I told him what I did. A few minutes later, he checked his USCIS portal, and there was finally an update after months of waiting. The update was that they wanted extra documents because they couldn't make a final decision based on what we submitted. It wasn't what we hoped for, but I persisted in my faith. Our lawyer scheduled a meeting and said it wasn't a big deal. We updated my mom, who expressed fears about a denial. I gave in for a while, but then I reaffirmed my belief. That night, I visualized this scene again and added a date, July 15th. I thought it would be cool if the work permit arrived then. It was the anniversary of my dad's death. After imagining one more time, I let it go. Next week, we met with the lawyer. She told us that since more documents were needed, our case would lose its place in line and take longer. In my head, I said, "That's not true. His permit is already here." She gave us a list of documents and mentioned an $800 fee for resubmission. We agreed, but I accepted none of this mentally. Walking to the car, my husband worried about his fee, and I reassured him, saying, "We won't pay her, and your work permit is in the mail." On the way home, I listened to Neville's teachings about not accepting undesired facts. I visualized us in the lawyer's office, hearing what I wanted. Her handing his green card and feeling gratitude and joy kept my inner conversations aligned with my desired reality. Yesterday, my mom shared that her sister, my aunt, who she was also filing for, received her green card on July 15th. My aunt had been in the US illegally since before I was born, and I knew it was only a matter of time before our time came. This morning, my mom called to say there was another letter from USCIS. We opened it, and it was his work permit. I was shaking with disbelief, and my heart was pounding. I can't believe I manifested this. Despite the odds and the lawyer's prediction of months, our case was pushed forward. It proves how the power within you can change outcomes. This is just a reminder that visualization is powerful. I've had amazing results over the years with coming into the awareness of things I wished for even before I learned of Neville Goddard. The biggest game changer, though, has been SATs and revision. I'm a part of an organization that has subgroups, and depending on the quality of your work, you get invited to work on other projects. A friend of mine had been doing great work, and I suggested to him that he should ask about getting put on a certain group because it opens up more opportunities. He eventually did inquire and was put into the group. He even sent me a copy of the email invitation. I was very happy for him, and I use this as confirmation that what God has done before, He will do again and more. Remember, if someone you know receives something you would like to experience, I like to look at this as yours is close by too, and that it is proof it exists. I also wanted to get invited to the group. I mentioned it to my friend, but at the time, I still had to finish some other projects and deliver great quality. What I did was read the picture he sent me, and I fell asleep with that in my mind, and that I had been invited to the group. I didn't do it every night. I would say I intentionally did it 4 to 5 nights, not consecutively, but when I remembered it. It was very relaxing and was always before I fell asleep. I was not in a state of desperation, and I expressed gratitude daily for all the good things in my life. Anytime I had free time, I was thanking God for all the past, present, and future good. Then, yesterday, it happened. I received the email exactly like the one my friend sent me a picture of. I was amazed, but I had also forgotten about it because, again, I was happy with the projects I was working on, even though I thought it would be cool if I got the email. I think seeing a picture of it, imagining receiving the same email, and also speaking it out loud and feeling excited as though it happened helped keep me in the awareness of it. Again, I was already grateful for everything, including my health, loved ones, and so many other things. I would say there were maybe a month or two when I began entertaining the idea that I would like to be in the group, but I also really liked where I was, so there was no pressure on myself. Long before I discovered Neville Goddard, I remember I was breaking up with the love of my life. We have an age gap, and he was in the West Coast while I was in the East. Our relationship was completely headed towards an end. I realized I really loved this guy, so before I slept, I would imagine he was right next to me, so I could sleep better. I remember even at one point, I would wear a ring to pretend I was married to him, just to feel more comforted and safe. I don't know, maybe I was a psycho, but it worked. We've been together now 3 years, and we're getting married next week. This past year, I discovered Neville Goddard and realized every single thing he said was true. It's crazy how it really worked, and even crazier realization that everything is possible. This morning, I started to look out on websites for new wireless Bluetooth earbuds for a specific brand. And while looking on the websites, I said to myself, I'm not going to pay this amount of money to get new earbuds. After that, I decided to have a look on Vinted to see if by any chance I could find them at a discount. Then I saw them, brand new, displayed at the price I just said in my head less than 5 minutes before. I made a price offer to get them a little bit cheap. I was thinking about the shipping fee. The vendor declined my offer first. He was fixed at the price that he was at and he didn't want to go below it. I just imagined myself wearing them for less than a minute. And I wrote to him to let him know that if he ever changed his mind, I would buy them at my price offer. Following this, I thought in my head that he will come back to me and tell me that he accepts the previous offer. 1 hour after that, he did. And he made an offer at my previous price offer. And just like that, I bought them at my wish price. And all this occurred within 2.5 hours. I wanted to talk about a submission that I got. And I had a bit of a difficult time with this one. I didn't know if I wanted to respond to it, or to, include it, because it's not really a success story. It's just kind of commentary or feedback. Essentially, someone that was saying, they encountered one of my success story videos, and they're not someone that believes in manifesting, and they're asking, you know, they would like if I could talk about why I believe manifestation is a real practice. Yeah, I didn't know if I wanted to respond to this because at first I didn't even know if this was like a legitimate, like I didn't know if they actually wanted to gain something out of it or if they were just leaving something because they could. But, I think that regardless of whether or not this person's gonna listen to it or not, I could still, make it pretty clear where I stand on manifestation and just kind of talk about where my belief might come from to, I don't know, maybe contextualize things. I did appreciate the, I guess, the idea of asking where my belief in manifestation does come from because it did force me to think about it, like fully actually try to put into words and like try and understand where exactly, like, I don't know, that comes from. That's a difficult thing to do because it's a belief. I mean, difficult, but I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding when it comes to what manifestation is. A lot of people oftentimes misunderstand it, and I think it's because there's a lot of definitions of what manifestation is. A lot of people are like, oh, you align your thoughts to a certain reality and you're working towards that reality. When I talk about manifestation, I talk about it and the success stories that I'm sharing, I'm specifically talking about manifestation in relation to the law of assumption. And this belief like system, like the law of assumption, it's about what you assume to be true, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, will manifest in your life. And it's essentially about how your internal beliefs, about yourself and the world, you experience them. You experience them out into the real world. This belief system, it's also like it's different from, the law of attraction version of manifestation or, other versions of manifestation where it's something that like it's a tool or technique you pick up, but it's like manifestation isn't really something you start doing. It's something you've always been doing, Everything around you is a manifestation of something internally. Your reality is being created by your assumptions. Even like thinking about it in realistic terms, like it shows up a lot in psychology where people choose to attract negative experiences based on whatever internal self-perceptions they have. So they could be self-sabotaging themselves or with self-fulfilling prophecies or confirmation bias, but they'll pick experiences that kind of match up with whatever view they have of themselves. And that's kind of like an acceptable form of proving yourself right. But in the case of, the law of assumption, this is your entire reality is being created by assumption. So like you saying things like, I'm not going to find parking or I don't have good relationships, it sets the stage for a lot of external situations and circumstances that are then now going to like validate those beliefs. The thing about this is that it's not really enough for me to say these words. Like these are just empty words. They mean something because you then start to like notice these patterns. Now, I'm aware that I've just talked about confirmation bias, so if you're paying attention specifically to how these things match that experience, then yeah, of course it's going to be like, yeah, this matches and this matches. So like you can just end up proving yourself right because you're trying to prove yourself right. You have to be able to be like, okay, I have to create an experience or try to, I don't know, manifest something that I can't really confirmation bias myself into. It has to be something that I like will prove to me that this isn't just me looking for things that prove me right. This is a situation that proves to me that this thing has now entered my reality that wouldn't have otherwise been there if I didn't set the intention for it to arrive. I'll talk a little bit more about this, but before that, when I also discovered manifestation, I also did not believe in it. I thought it was just coincidence. I had a very difficult time realizing how my thoughts were creating the reality. And so I chalked everything up to coincidences. And I think, to be honest with you, that's probably the number one reason why manifestation isn't a widely accepted thing. It's oftentimes like unfolds very naturally and it's easy to dismiss it. When you look at like a lot of cultures, African, European, Middle Eastern, Caribbean, Asian cultures around the world have like beliefs rooted in supernatural and like unexplainable phenomena. And what we call manifestation today is just it's a modern term for practices and ideas that have existed for centuries. So hearing other people's stories about, you know, how their thoughts created their reality, it's inspiring. And not to mention, your belief on things are only informed by whatever experiences you have until that point. There's been plenty of times where people believed something and it wasn't what is now believed, like let's say the sun being the center of our solar system as opposed to Earth. There were a lot of people that believed Earth was the center of our solar system, or even at the time, the center of our universe. But they didn't have the awareness, the knowledge to know that it wasn't. So, in the same way, I think that there is never really objective reality happening. And I like to be a little skeptical, even about, manifestation, because again, you can never be sure about what exactly is happening, but also because there's so many recorded studies and writings from people in different places, in different walks of life, that have all experienced things that are, unexplainable. It's very hard for me to sit here and be like, no, I don't believe that. Because, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that I can say all of them were mistakes or all of them were people not seeing things or all of them were like group hallucinations or like, I don't think that's true. And even if that is true, there's no harm in humoring them for a little bit before you get there. Ultimately, I can try and explain why I believe in the law of assumption, but my belief in it isn't really something tangible. It's not something that I can explain in words. I started really believing in manifestation when I started testing it for myself. I I tested things and I started realizing like they they weren't coincidences because when you're intentionally trying to manifest something very specific, quickly becomes clear that it's not random. I appreciate the submission, and the person said that they were trying to manifest my response, which, I mean, I guess you got it, but I wouldn't necessarily say that that is a success story. If you're coming from a perspective of like, I don't believe you, and I don't believe this world, then anything I say is kind of just noise. But if you want to challenge yourself, like actually, I recommend trying something called the ladder experiment. So Neville Goddard, who was like a very key person behind the law of assumption, he usually used this exercise to help people, you know, see how they can create their assumptions in their reality. And so, like, just for a couple days, like, tell yourself repeatedly that you had to climb a ladder, or you climbed a ladder, or you know, and not just like a couple times either. Like, tell yourself that you climbed a ladder. Like, picture yourself climbing that ladder, affirm as though it's like already happened. And if it's not a ladder, maybe if you already climb ladders in your daily life, then don't pick a ladder. Pick something that you might not, you know, otherwise experience in your daily life, but pick something that can happen, but something that doesn't frequently happen. Like someone inviting you to go to the beach or inviting you to play tennis or something. Yeah, and repeat that. If you are, actually curious about manifesting or about why I think it's a legit thing, and even for the sake of proving me wrong, try it. Okay, I just wanted to say that, but thank you for listening again, and there will be more coming soon.